Alrighty, chapter three. This is where we start to really get into the weeds. We start to get working. We've got our framework set up, so let's start getting categorizing on our first transactions, okay? So, chapter three will cover categorizing the first most of the transactions and seeing where they all go and reviewing kind of our work for that 1 month. And we're going to reconcile our first month as well, make sure that we have the account balances all taken care of, and we'll be using some of those reference files for the first time in the Google Drive. So let's get started. We're going to go to our QuickBooks, and we just left off on setting up our chart of accounts. So let's go to transactions and bank transactions, and we're going to do our first set of transactions. Now, the first thing you want to do is it will by default give you the latest transaction. So flip this to where you see the oldest transactions because to me, and in general, you can't really reconcile an account backwards. So you have to reconcile it from the oldest date towards the newest date. And one thing that, you'll see here is, oh my gosh, there's 938, there's so many transactions. This is a 1 of 50 of 401, but there's actually that many. You see so many tabs. What I want you to do, and this is what I do when I work, is I go here and I set the month to be the month that I'm working in so that I feel like I'm really only doing a month at a time. So the first month is going to be July 2022. Let's hit apply. And wow, there are only 10 transactions in the first out of 12 months. And this is what I love. So the other thing that QuickBooks does is since if you have multiple transactions that post on the same date, they're going to look like you have a negative balance, like you spent money before you even had money in, right? So don't worry about this too much. I like to go by date, is a really good way to start. So we're going to start that way. Now we'll see that all of these here, and you can click on the first one. You can click on the first one, hold shift, and then click on the last one to be able to select multiple at a time. You can unselect multiple, never mind, cannot unselect multiple at a time. These first four transactions are all July 1st, right? So logically, let's say we have to have money in the account and before we spend any money, right? So let's look at these money in transactions first on the first. The first one says Chase transfer in. If you don't know what it is, you should either ask somebody that's, your boss, or you should ask the client that you're working for if you really don't know. But the best thing to do would be to, use your subjective thinking and really try to come up with an answer before you have a list of very menial transactions, right? Because right now there's only 10 in this month, but let's say out of 10 you had two. That means out of 1,000 transactions, you might have 100 questions for the owner, right? So we want to try to logically think through what these could be. And since we're thinking of this in the sense of business owners opening a cafe for the very first time, and like I said earlier, there has to be cash in the account before we start, right? So this is going to be an owner contribution. We're going to assume the owner is you. Let's say you're the one that's running this cafe. So I'm going to say prithvi. I'm going to add new to this. And you'll see as a default, it'll say I'm a vendor, right? But if you click on this contact type, you'll see vendor or employee. So what I like to do here for the owner and the owner only most of the time is I'll set it as an employee because the rest will be set up differently. We hit prithvi, JBTC, and you don't have to really put the rest of this in. Again, it's for tracking purposes at a really high level. If it's required of you, please do put it in. But for the purpose of this exercise, we won't have to. So I'm going to save this. So Prithvi JPTC is the owner. And the account this is going to is the contributions, because again, this is a contribution of cash to be able to start spending the money and start getting everything in, right? We're going to hit add. So now that we have 15,000 in the bank account that we've categorized, and real quick, before I go into the rest of these, let's see how we see that, right? Let's go to reports. And again, I think everything starts on the profit and loss, right? So let's click on the profit and loss and make sure, because unfortunately we have 2022 transactions, make sure we are looking at 2022. So to look at a full year, you would start with January 1st and we would end with December 31st, and then we'll hit the run report. You'll still see that there's no data in here. So before we freak out and we think that we did something wrong, let's go back to reports. And let's go to balance sheet and see if it exists there. And magically now we start to see, oh wow, there's 15,000 in the bank account and there's contributions of 15,000 as well. Now you'll see that this is for 2024 and it's still showing up now. And we'll kind of get into that why that happens later. But for now, even if you were to switch this to 1/1/2022 to 12/31/2022, you will see that we have the same values. So your balance sheet will still have those values in it. So now we know, oh, a contribution ends up hitting your balance sheet on the bank account and the equity side. Why? Let's not worry about that for now and let's move on to the next one. Let's say you accidentally picked a different account here and you hit accept. How do you go back and fix that? You can go to categorized. You can click on this description checkbox, hit undo. You can go back and it'll be there as if you never did anything with it. So let's go through and let's get everything categorized for July. And let's, talk about why we're categorizing things in certain places. So we're going to pick July as a month that I want to see exclusively. So I feel like I only have 10 transactions to do. Let's put this one back in, prithvi. I'm going to say contributions. I'm going to hit add. All right. So here we have something called chase payment to landlord. We don't even know what it's for. The memo only says that. And sometimes in these situations, if you don't have these documents, you should ask for them. So the lease payment is going to be really helpful to go and look at the landlord sublease agreement. So let's double click on this PDF and let's read through it real quick. You can read through here. You can see, obviously, this is a sample generated, but if you read through this, you'll see that the lease commences on July 1st, 2022, and ends on June 30th, 2024. So maybe this is a rent payment, right? And if we scroll down really quickly and we're not really thinking about it, oh wow, there is a rent payment, but this is due for August 1st. So let's just keep reading through it real quick. Security deposit is collected from the tenant on July 1st, 2022 of 1,250. That matches exactly to what we're looking for. But let's just get a sense real quick of what this lease is going to look like, right? So looks like we sent a $1,250 deposit on the first. And then if we look at the rent schedule, free rent is provided for July 2022, so there's no rent. And then starting August 1st, we're going to have 1250 rent, which looks correct here. Then, according to the sublease, every 6 months, we're going to have a rent increase by 160, which is shown in the table, right? And then we have some other just generic termination clauses and other things at the bottom. So this table will be really helpful for us understanding what the amounts that we're paying to the landlord really are and if they match or not, right? So part of a good bookkeeper is being able to see if there's a discrepancy. Maybe we underpaid, so we should make sure we get paid up on the true balance before it becomes a problem. Or maybe we overpaid and we need to, collect that balance back. But either way, now we know the reason for the 1,250 that was spent on July 1st. So remember, we're going to put in landlord here. And what you can do is if the landlord has an LLC name that you're paying to, that would be the best thing to put in. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to say landlord LLC because typically that's what a landlord is going to look like. And you can hit save and you can put in all their information if you'd like. This was security deposit, so we're going to look for our deposit, lease deposit. We're going to add that in. All right. So the next one, it says loan Chase Bank, and we received $7,500. So think about it. If you've ever taken a personal loan or, however that part works, you would be taking out a loan and you would be getting cash, right? So let's just quickly go over here to our documents again and just see if we have anything before we try to figure out what this is for. We see there's a loan amortization schedule. Let's click it in. So the amortization schedule kind of shows you the payments. If we go here and if we add 730934 plus this principal payment of 190.66, you'll see that the original balance of the loan was 7,500. So we borrowed 7,500 to, assist in the cafe cash flow. So we're going to say Chase Bank because Chase Bank is a person that we are getting the loan from. hit save. And we're going to pick the loan liability account. Then we'll just hit add. Again, if you have questions about why we're doing it this way, again, I think part of it is doing it and understanding it, looking at the balance sheet and seeing how it all goes in. But also feel free to send a message on the community. I'm happy to jump on and help you understand why we do things in a certain way and what the overall theory or the explanation or reasoning behind it is. So Vistaprint is the next one. And so Vistaprint is obviously, if we look it up, and this is something we do as a bookkeeper a lot. If we click on Vistaprint, we'll see this is for a bunch of different things. It could be for business cards, but it looks like it's for merchandise, right? So we're going to book it as a merchandise. Merchandise purchase. Austin Branding Company. So this, if we search it up, probably not going to get much, but Austin Branding Company is obviously for advertising. That's how I set it up, at least in my head. So we're going to look for advertising and we're going to hit that as an expense. Central Insurance Agency. So obviously every business is going to be liability insurance. So we're going to put Central Insurance. We're going to put this under insurance expense under the utility sub. Then we're going to see, oh, there's a coffee machine supply spent for 7,500, right? So really, we're thinking about that loan that we took out was purely for the coffee machine account, right? But this is a equipment piece. So let's add our vendor here, coffee machine supply, save. We'll look over our equipment account as we purchased this equipment. Furniture Mart. So we're gonna say Furniture Mart. And we're gonna throw it into the furniture asset. Austin Signs and Boards. And with a little bit of educated guessing, we can think that is signage. The last transaction of all of July is a web restaurant store, right? We spent 748 here. So I know there's an account called Small Tools and Kitchen Supplies, but what we're going to assume here, right, is there's no sales yet. This cafe hasn't opened yet. So we're setting up either it's glasses or, it could be like different things that you'll need within a cafe. But overall, what you might be buying from the web restaurant store, if it isn't specifically equipment, is probably going to be small tools and supplies. Here, we're going to do small kitchen tools and supplies, and we're going to choose to expense this rather than putting it as fixed because the idea is, and again, if you really wanted to dial into this, you could go and pull the invoice and really split the whole thing up. But we're trying to look at this as a holistic, quick way to do everything, right? And if we try to look this in a holistic way, really anything we buy from the web store is most likely either a consumable or something that's too small to want to set as a fixed asset. If that last statement didn't make too much sense, it's okay. Again, a lot of this is let's do it first and we'll understand how everything comes together later. So this is going to be small kitchen tools and supplies. So let's hit add and we've taken care of everything that's in the date range of July 2022. Now, let's take a look at our reports and see how our income statement and our balance sheet both look now.